Hey, the truckers want some information. And by the way, we all want the information. And we're still waiting for the information. And if you don't have a classic chicken or the egg situation going on here right now between the Raimondo administration, the Rhode Island Truckers Association, and the taxpayers, and frankly, I think you could draft the taxpayers in behind the Truckers Association, then I've never seen one before. It is great to have you aboard. Thanks for tuning in to My State of Mind. I am Dan York. On this Monday evening, we go to the rundown. We have the head guy of the Truckers Association coming up. Chris Maxwell will join us in just a couple of minutes, so don't go anywhere. All right, let's just cover some of the issues that are. This is only the Donald could pull this off. Is he kidding me? Here's a headline that's running around now. Somehow we got Flashdance in the middle of this, and I think you'll find out why when we run this package from CBS.
My whole life has been about winning. I'm going to win.
A determined Donald Trump wasted no time pouncing on his advancing GOP rival, Ted Cruz.
Well, you look at the way he's dealt with the Senate, where he goes in there like a, frankly, like a little bit of a maniac.
A Des Moines Register Bloomberg poll shows Cruz with a 10-point lead in Iowa. Cruz has been reluctant to criticize Trump. He'd like to win over Trump's supporters. However, the Texas senator did post a lighthearted comment on Twitter with a link to the 1980 song Maniac. Republican strategists say Cruz could be just as polarizing to the electorate as Trump.
You need more female voters, more Hispanics. And instead of learning those lessons, you have candidates like Cruz and Trump who are doing the exact opposite.
Fight for the kind of future we deserve.
Another new poll shows Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton would defeat Trump or Cruz in the general election, but she would narrowly lose to Marco Rubio or Ben Carson. 9 GOP candidates face off tomorrow night in Las Vegas for another primetime debate.
You got to give the Donald credit. Only he could pull off positioning somebody else as the maniac in this race. It is amazing to me. That debate tomorrow night on CNN is going to be informative. It's on security. It's going to be gangbusters. It's going to be nuts. But of course, what I'm trying to figure out is, what's Jennifer Beals doing anymore? Do we still have another? That movie was incredible. Let me tell you something. Back in 1983. I watched that movie a couple of times, I have to admit. What is she doing now? We're having a conflict on it. She was on the what was it, the L show? What is the L? The L Word. So in other words, she's got no career after that, is what you're saying. We'll look her up. Frankly, she was just fine back then. All right, I'm out of control. As is Donald, or is Ted Cruz, I can't remember which. To the thing that I think is most provocative about the weekend, and that is the rally in Providence. And I'm really happy, after you see a headline and some coverage here, that there seems to be some energy between the American Muslim community and the rest of us Americans. Perry Russin reported from the event.
I offer you these words.
The message at the rally outside of City Hall was simple. Not all Muslims are terrorists. Renee Syed tells us since the attacks in Paris, it's been hard for her Muslim family, saying there's an open hatred against the people of her faith.
Their ideology is not our ideology, yet I keep seeing posts on Facebook about how my kids don't belong in this country.
Asun Mirza organized the rally.
This is a cancer of extremism. We collectively have to get rid of it, otherwise it will consume us.
Mirza says stress has been building within the Muslim community with a feeling of being marginalized and dehumanized.
It's very important for me that I find hope in the people of America in response to what has been happening. There are bad people everywhere, but just because a certain group of bad people happen to be Muslim doesn't mean that all Muslims are bad.
The growth in fear of Muslims has been prominent on the political stage. Republican candidate for President Donald Trump proposed a ban on Muslims from entering the country.
My hope is we walk from here with love and the message of peace for all, for our children's future. That is the only one way forward, is peace and harmony. There is no other way, neither there's any other alternative.
There's that last placard there, ISIS does not equal Islam, is an interesting way to put it. we had some terrific guests on all last week who, in their own ways, described their own Muslim faith, Islamic faith, and, you know, admitted that these folks who are involved in terror might call themselves Islamists, Muslims, but that they've hijacked the entire faith with cut and paste interpretations of the Quran. Facebook was full of reaction to the guests that I had last week, and you know, Hank put a post up that looked like this: thanks for scheduling more people to carry on the ideals of the Founding Fathers, meaning religious freedom. Don't forget, you can go to foxprovidence.com and see every show. If you missed the trucking conversation that we have tonight, you can go to foxprovidence.com and see it. We post the show just about at 8 o'clock at most evenings. And all 3 programs that we did on the relationship between Muslim Americans and the rest of the country are there as well. Important conversations. Speaking of important, 38 Studios has been a very, very important subject matter for us for a long time, and now we see another, what might be a development headline: House panel to consider Constantino and Corso subpoenas. Here's Michael Corso, right? I think that's the first. There he is, the guy, kind of the business guy behind the scenes that put the 38 Studios thing together, guy that makes all the money from the tax credits. And there's Steve Constantino in his formal picture as the House Finance Chairman. By the way, Steve Constantino is skip town and works in Vermont now in the bureaucracy there. They may get a little bit of a message in the mail. Looks like they're going to get subpoenas, and the reaction by Mr. Corso, the first picture guy there, Mike Lepizzero, was interesting. He suggests in a Providence Journal story, we'll see some of the things that he has said here. Let's see, there we go. He has been suggesting that the chairperson, Karen Macbeth, has been making continuous misrepresentations, excuse me, and slanderous remarks concerning his client, worried whether Corso gets a fair hearing. It goes on. He says that she simply has no clue that what she is about what she's talking about regarding the whole thing. And he says, to that end, it's highly unlikely that I'll subject my client as a witness in a highly misguided and ill-conceived process based on, you know, bias of politics, and that he lost money. Look, here's the thing. I mean, here's Karen Macbeth. She's you've seen her, right? She's been here on a couple of occasions. She has done her best to run this hearing process in the haphazard Keystone Cop way that it's designed by the Speaker. If the Speaker really wanted a professional operation here, he would call for it. He would hire counsel. Counsel would determine who gets called. Fair hearings would have at least a chance. But, you know, you got this makeshift type of event that is completely underwhelming and lacks the substance that it deserves. So, you know, while I'm no fan of Mr. Corso, I certainly understand what his counsel is saying about that. Alrighty. I remind you that we had a headline a few days ago regarding some public information that the truckers are looking for. And that's our conversation for this evening. Sitting patiently by is Chris Maxwell, who runs the Rhode Island Trucking Association as the president. Good to see you, my friend. It's been a while.
Good to be back, Dan. Here we are again.
You want information.
We do.
You can't have information. You want the truth. You don't want the truth.
Reminds you of something, doesn't it? Yeah, well, we seek the truth, and unfortunately on Friday we received our answer from RITA saying that they had a lot on their plate to answer, and they are not prepared to give us the information we requested, and they pushed it out as far as January 13th, which is, you know, a week into the legislative session. So we would have wanted some information well prior to that, so we could have developed some sort of understanding of the information we're requesting in advance of the legislative session, which begins on January 5th. But again, we're not getting what we need. The data that went into the toll traffic counts, the correspondence between the governor, RIDOT, Federal Highway, and most specifically where the gantries are. I think we all were under the impression that when this rolled out in May and June, that the information that we're requesting now in December was forthcoming. I think it speaks to the fact that I don't think anybody intended for this program to get the scrutiny it's getting now. I think that it was on the fast track. It was rammed into the legislation. We were blindsided by it. The Senate voted on it, and I think the intention from the governor and RITA was to slam this through because it wasn't going to hold up to the scrutiny that it's getting now. I don't think road works on paper. I think that time and time again their reluctance to put the information out there speaks to the fact that this economic renaissance and stimulus for the next decade, if it has that much merit, then it should be out there before the Trucking Association, before the public, but it's not. So we don't think it works on paper. We think it won't hold up, and that's why they're withholding the information on the gantry locations.
Right. Well, that sets it up as well as it could be set up. More questions and the Trucking Association's position and their solutions to the challenge of constructing roads and bridges when we come back. Stay with us.
Well, what I will say conceptually is that in a state that's depressed like Rhode Island, in a state where unemployment has obviously come down, but there's still a lot of slack in the labor market, you want to redirect economic activity towards the present, and one way to do that is by issuing debt.
That was a Brown economist, Neil Malhotra, who was on the program a few weeks back, talking about his support for the truck toll program that Gina Raimondo has tried to make work since last May. Chris Maxwell of the Trucking Association, my guest here, I'm sure disagrees with that concept, but you guys have your own perspective, and that is that you're the ones that are the immediate victims of this whole thing, and you threw a lot into your opening remarks. I just want to reposition for everybody. What we've had here is the governor's May presentation has fallen into this place of limbo because although the Senate supported her conceptual legislation to establish these gantries, meaning tolls, the House of Representatives took a pass. Thankfully, the House Speaker thought it was appropriate to take a pass. I don't know that he took a pass for the right reasons. He was making deals on all sorts of other things and still is. So be careful of that. But the Trucking Association did something smart. And that is, in addition to your opening salvo to oppose the concept, you asked for the diligence, the public information. You asked for the reports that have since been filed. Timing-wise, think about this. So we had 2 consultant reports after the announcement of the plan to try to fill in the blanks on the details on this whole thing. Right. You asked for them. Yeah. You've asked for a very specific request that most citizens would like to hear accomplished, fulfilled. And that is, where are you going to put these things?
Correct.
Nothing. And they've told you it's going to be at least weeks down the line. What does that tell you about what you think the prep is for this whole program on the part of the Raimondo administration and the DOT? Do you think they know where they want to put these gantries?
If they don't,
because they say, not to interrupt.
Yeah,
sorry.
sure.
What they say, we need the enabling legislation in order to be able to put the plan in front of the feds, and so we can't tell you where those are. I don't get it.
I think they're hiding behind Federal Highway. Federal Highway is taking a hands-off approach from the beginning on this whole thing. In this case, they're kind of contradicting because now they're turning to Federal Highway saying that we cannot disclose the gantry locations until Federal Highway approves them. We don't believe that. We are now approaching Federal Highway and Administrator Machado with specific answers. Is it in fact true that the DOT and the governor cannot disclose the locations until such time as you approve them?
Is there precedent for the feds to respond to requests like that? Have you done any homework on whether or not they're inclined to want to answer that question in the middle of this mess?
Well, I can't see why they wouldn't. This is a yes or no answer, and if they don't answer here, they're going to answer in Washington because we're working both ends of it. So we've got the ATA requesting the information in Washington, and we're requesting it locally.
It'd be terribly embarrassing for the Raimondo administration to have the feds say, that timing is not an issue. In other words, they could tell the public where they want to put gantries all day long.
And I can't, under this whole dome of non-transparency, I don't believe the Federal Highway wants to get involved in this whole the way this is happening. I think the Federal Highway, again, has an obligation to say yes or no. We have a right as an industry, the citizens of Rhode Island have a right, the business owners have a right to know where the gantries are. The mayors of municipalities have a right to know. If trucks are going to leapfrog gantries on 95 and drive up through from Quonset to East Greenwich into the new Apponaug circulator and up Elmwood Avenue to bypass gantries, those mayors deserve to know that. So I don't understand. Either they don't have the information, which is a worse scenario than they have it and they're not disclosing it. I believe it maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Again, I go back to my original point, Dan, is that I don't think this thing was designed to be scrutinized in January. I think it was designed to go through on the fast track in May and June and worry about it later. Get it through and worry about the fallout later.
All right, you guys at the Trucking Association have come up with your own ideas as to how to finance. And again, we haven't talked about the numbers much.
Yeah.
It's a $500 million road and bridge
Correct.
project, mostly bridges.
Right.
It's mostly the 610 connector. They want to be able to get another $400 million for the $400 million of the $500 million they're going to use. In other words, there's only $100 million in this plan for bridges other than the 610 connector.
Correct.
Where they're going to get that funding
Right.
is still suspect. We just went through that. The key here, though, is that you say, okay, we get it. Bridges need to be reconstructed.
Yep.
We'll figure out a way to do it.
Okay.
And your proposal is what?
Is a diesel tax of 18 cents, increase registration fees, take back your
Registration fees for trucks.
For trucks, we absorb that. Now, I'm getting some brushback from a lot of people in my industry that say, don't give them anything.
Independent truckers.
Correct.
Not happy with you.
But I contend that would you rather have $500 registration increase a year or $500 per truck per week? So we're taking the lesser.
Where do you get the latter number there? That's your projection?
Well, projected if you
How
have
do you do that
if you have a
without the
fleet.
gantries?
Well, we don't. I mean, everyone.
Going back to your own request.
Everyone is trying to surmise, but if you have 10 trucks and they're running up, that much, cost per day back and forth. Do the math. I mean, we have members that are assessing their stature in Rhode Island as businesses because they're seeing an impact of upwards of $100,000 for the year to operate their fleets, which speaks to the bigger picture of diversion. Everything we're talking about, it's all great. The REME report, the numbers, the traffic counts. At the end of the day, we will either stop it legislatively or the trucking industry will stop it just by freedom of choice and commerce. You're basing the 10 years on the behavior of an industry. You're basing something of $60 million that you're never gonna attain $60 million from the trucking industry. You're basing that on the discretion of an industry to say, not going through Rhode Island, whether it's by virtue of economics or by virtue of principle. The trucking industry is looking at Rhode Island somewhat with laughter, saying, are you really going to do this? Because we're just going to pull right around your state, and that's going to be the Achilles heel of this whole program.
Hold that thought, because that's why I keep telling you why you got to pay attention to this. Stay with us.
The idea that debt is good, I fundamentally disagree with. Debt actually got us into a big problem with our budget deficits over the past 30 years. It was only a few years ago that we made the smart choice to stop using debt for our maintenance, and it actually helped to alleviate some of our budget deficits.
Representative Blake Filippi in that argument between he and the economist. What Chris just said in the last segment I think is really important. You are absolutely convinced that the trucking world out there, if in a few years we see tolls up here in Rhode Island, will do everything they can both on an economic level and on a philosophical and principle level to avoid those tolls.
The ultimate insult to this industry is that we just learned last week, which was a relief, that the DOT is confirming and conceding that Mother Nature does in fact play a role in the deterioration, which is a big development from Assistant Director Garino. But the notion that a state that is this dysfunctional, that has put this infrastructure in the position that it's in, that has scapegoated an industry, the notion that's happening, nationwide, they're looking at this and they're going to make it fail. That's the bottom line. And then that loss of revenue from the through truckers
Meaning they'll go up $3.95 to the Pike.
they'll go up $3.95 to the Mass Pike.
Pike's $11 to get to where they would be going in the
Correct.
Northeast corridor anyway.
$11.50 versus $30, and the fact now that you're hitting two of the top 100 bottlenecks in the Northeast in the country, Route 95 195 and 95 128. Another fact that will support diversion.
So here's the reason why this is not just a truckers issue. Because if in fact, Chris mentioned $60 million, that's the annual revenue that they're going to gain from this whole thing, from the Truckers Association. If they don't get that, Gina Raimondo talked about upping the tolls. Well, if you keep upping the tolls against an industry that's not coming through to pay them,
correct,
guess who's going to end up paying them? The people who drive these things known as cars. Because there'll be $40 to $60 million worth of infrastructure up that they're not going to take down.
Correct.
You drive a car?
I do.
Yeah, well, it's also a problem.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Go to the store to get groceries or drive your kid to school. Pay
All
a toll.
that.
The disturbing thing throughout this is that we have come to the forefront as good in good faith, given that 18 cents. Given that the registration fee, given back what we feel is a ill-advised tax credit, suggested that they carve the 610 out, which under the new highway reauthorization with the grant opportunities and everything going on there, makes it more feasible to do 610 separately.
Not to interrupt, did the governor not miss a golden opportunity when Jack Reed came back with more federal money for the highways a week ago to say, oh, you know what? New information, new money. Let me drop this truck toll program.
Look, again, Roadworks, from day one, the wheels have come off. They continue to come off, and I feel that this was a perfect opportunity for this governor to step away from Roadworks. I think she's gotten terrible information, bad advice from day one. I think this opportunity and our gesture, the money we wanted to put in as an industry, the new game in Washington that really was part of the driving force of some of these local issues trying to solve problems, and we understand that. But this was a perfect opportunity for the governor to get out of this mess. She was sold this plan, and I unfortunately think it's a legacy issue that she doesn't want to give up on. What's disturbing to me is that we keep, whoever I speak to, whether it be in the media, whether it be the governor's office, whether it be the legislature, what we're planning and what the federal government has now that maybe didn't have a month ago for us is not enough. And I contend what is enough. If $60 million is a pipe dream. It is smoke and mirrors.
Meaning annual revenue.
The annual revenue projected from roadwork and truck tolls. It's never going to happen. So we offer what we feel is real money, sustainable money, and it's not enough because everything's being trumped up against this $60 million.
Well, the
60
difficulty
million
is, and
a
we're
pipe
short
dream.
on time here, the difficulty is your idea is going to the general fund. Your revenue is going to the general fund. They don't trust themselves to be able to be disciplined in the general fund. That's why they're trying to create another authority. And that's one of the problems that goes along with this. But we'll keep watching you fight the good fight.
It's gonna ramp up very soon, and
it's going to be an interesting winter.
It sure is. Thank you, Dan.
Drive safely out there.
Yeah, sure. Thank
It's
you.
free for now.
Appreciate it.
Sort of.
For now.
We'll be right back. And speaking of highways, you know that beautiful $4.3 billion rest area visitor center that's on the wrong side of the highway going out of Rhode Island? Well, the guy that was, the guy that bought the restaurant there or the deal, he's getting hammered, and he's here tomorrow night. We'll see you then. Bye.